Hello everyone, and welcome to the Introduction to Spark and Python lecture. Let's go ahead and learn how we can use Python and Spark with PySpark. I'm going to go ahead and connect to my Jupyter Notebook now. Alright, so here I am at the Jupyter Notebook. Let's go ahead and get started learning how to use Spark with Python using the PySpark library. Make sure to view the video lectures before this one in order to understand how to set everything up. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is say from PySpark import Spark context. We'll go ahead and run that, and depending on your connection that may take a while, but first we need to create this Spark context. Now that we've created this Spark context, basically a Spark context represents the connection to the Spark cluster, and it can be used to create an RDD and broadcast variables on that cluster. You should keep in mind that you can only really have one Spark context at a time the way we are running things here. In order to actually create a Spark context, we're going to just say sc equals Spark context, close parentheses, and run that. And again, this may take a while depending on how good your connection is, but this is going to create that actual Spark context. And then we're going to do some basic operations. We're just going to start with a hello world type example, which is essentially just reading a text file. In order to read a text file, we need to create a text file. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is use some essentially what's known as Jupyter Notebook magic commands to quickly write a text file here. I'm going to say %, write file, then example.txt. And this is a magic command that's going to say write the file example.txt. And then whatever else you put into the cell below is actually going to be part of that text file. So I'm just going to say first line, second line, then third line, and we'll finish it off with a fourth line. I'm going to go ahead and run this, and you should see some sort of output that says writing example.txt. And this should all go in one cell together, and you should make sure that the spacing is exactly the same here, that there's no extra spaces between write file and the first line, or write file and the top of the cell. Just make sure and copy and paste this exactly, and you can always reference the note for this course, the notebooks for this course. Now that we've taken in the text file, what we can do is create an RDD. We can take in that text file using the text file method off of the Spark context we created. And that method will read a text file from HDFS, a local file system, or any Hadoop supported file system, and return it as an RDD of strings. Let me show you what I mean by all that. I'm going to make an object called text file, and then I'm going to say sc dot, and you can actually click tab here if you want to see all the methods available to you, but the one we're going to look at is text file. And we're going to pass it example.txt, the text file we just created. Alright, so now we just created an RDD using the text file method, and we can perform operations on this object. So this object right here, text file, that is the RDD. sc is the Spark context that connects to a Spark cluster, and then we call this method text file on some sort of text object in order to create the actual RDD object. And remember back from the lectures, we can perform actions or transformations on an RDD objects. So RDDs have actions which return values, and transformations which return pointers to new RDDs. Let's go ahead and start with just actions first. So I'm going to type text file, and then if I call dot on it, I can see a bunch of actions, methods, and transformations that are available to me. I'm going to start with the most basic action, which is count. And when I run this, this is going to just count the number of elements in that RDD. And in this case, since it's a text file, each element is just a line here. So there's 4 lines of text. First line, second line, third line, and fourth line. And if I actually want to just grab as an action the first line, first is another common action you can take, and it will grab the first object back from that RDD. In this case, it's just that string first line. Now, those are actions, but we can actually perform transformations when we want to do more complicated tasks. We can use transformations, such as the filter transformation, to return a new RDD with a subset of items in the file. Let's go ahead and create a sample transformation using the filter method. And this method works pretty much similar to Python's own filter function. It will only return elements that satisfy the condition. Let's go ahead and try looking for lines that contain the word second. So if we look back here to the text file, we're only looking for lines that contain this word, second. So when we run this, we should only grab this second line. Going to go ahead and say sec find, and I'm going to say text file, that's my RDD, and I'm going to call filter on it. And I'm going to filter using a lambda expression. Lambda line, now we'll say second in line. Let me go ahead and run that. And note how fast that was to run. The reason for that is because, as we mentioned earlier, RDDs are lazily evaluated, meaning you don't actually execute all those instructions of transformations until you perform an action. So you can essentially just think of transformations as a recipe. So if I take a look at what sec find is, it just says Python RDD at python.scala, etc. Yours may be a little different, but that's basically just telling you it's some sort of RDD. It has a recipe of instructions to follow, but it doesn't actually execute them until you ask for the performance of the action. And now I can call sec find.collect, and now it's actually going to perform an action on the transformation, and it returns back that second line where second was in that line. And if I can do more actions on it, such as count, and in this case there's only one line, so it counts one line. And that's really the basic idea of using Spark with Python. You're going to import a Spark context, create a Spark context to connect to your Spark cluster. In our case, we created a simple data set, but most likely you'll connect to your own data. It's going to be probably a very large data set, depending on how you store it. And then you will create that Spark context and use that Spark context to create an RDD based off of whatever type of text file you have, or another data source. And we'll show in the next lecture some more data sources and other ways to create RDDs. But text file is the way you can create it using a basic text file. So now that you created this RDD, you basically have two options: either perform an action or perform a transformation. And notice again how the transformations won't display any output until the run action is called. All right, so again, just basically separate in your mind that you have transformations, which is essentially just building out a recipe of stuff you want to perform on that RDD. None of that actually is executed until you perform your action, meaning you can kind of create a complicated recipe without having to worry about a lot of downtime by running all the recipe commands. It's only going to run when you call a particular action command. And in the next lecture, what we're going to do is have a resource for you with a list of all the possible transformations, all the possible actions, and we're going to show many more examples of this transformation-action relationship. This is just a very basic example for you, for us to get started with. All right, hope you enjoyed the lecture. Feel free to post any questions to the Q&A forums, and I'll see you at the next lecture.